Well, here we are in the brand new year of 2025, and of course, with a brand new year upon us, then we'll go ahead and just take a look back on the previous year of 2024 and just close out that chapter together. So I'm sorry if I sound a little bit more nasally than usual. I am, of course, sick again. For some reason, I just feel like the cold and flu season this year has just been lingering forever, so it just won't fully go away, unfortunately. So please don't mind the voice, but we'll go ahead and jump right in. For those of you who are unfamiliar, then for 2024, I was using a B5 Archer and Olive dotted journal. And for the past 3 years, then I was using a B5 size. I just thought that the size of the page was very nice for a lot of room to plan. And as you can see, I did end up adding quite a bit of bulk to it. I'd say the main thing that contributes to the bulk would be the watercolor paper that I would paste in every month for my cover pages. So for this first page, then I just went ahead and added a name page for my journal. I decided to name this bullet journal Hunter just because of the deep, beautiful green cover. And for this very first dotted page here, then this is where I decided to add a little goals section. And I also included kind of like a gift ideas list here. As you can see, I ended up not really using it. That's something that I ended up just keeping track of stuff on my phone just because it was kind of easier to quickly pull that out and type in any ideas into like my notes app if I randomly thought of a gift for someone. So I just ended up not really coming back to this page, unfortunately, for the gift ideas. And then for this bottom section here, then this is where I included like my future plans for 2025. So this is something that I started wanting to incorporate in my journals moving forward just because it's something that helps me remember like future appointments, like when I have like my annual checkup or my routine dentist appointments, then sometimes that would end up being in the following year. So that was just a nice way for me to keep track of everything in just a small little section. So as you see here, I went ahead and just pasted in a tiny little 2025 calendar using my HP Sprocket printer. And you'll see for pretty much the majority of the images that I ended up pasting into my bullet journal over the year, then they were all from my HP Sprocket printer, which just so conveniently prints out tiny little like 2 by 3 inch images. Sorry, I just quickly went to go pop in a cough drop just because my throat has been really bothering me trying to film this video, unfortunately. But I'm going to try and power through this and hopefully be able to share the journal with you guys. So as you'll see, I only included a couple of yearly spreads in my bullet journal. This first one being the 2024 overview. And this is where I just wrote out each of the months and listed any specific events like birthdays, appointments, vacations, anniversaries, etc. And then on the side here, then I just have kind of like a master bills list. It's something that I find very helpful for me to have all of my bills listed out in one area. And that way when I'm doing like my monthly planning, then I can go ahead and just reference this and take a look at what are all the bills that are going to be due that month. So yeah, that's basically just what's covered underneath these post-it notes here. As you can see, I just kept it pretty minimal. I didn't want to introduce too many doodles or decorations. I just basically switched up the colors a couple of times, but still kept it relatively neutral. And then for the only other yearly spread that I have here in the beginning is this 2024 in Polaroids or pictures. So at the end of every month, then I would just go through my phone, pick out basically like my favorite picture or the image that best represents the month for me. And then I would go ahead and print it out using my HP Sprocket printer and paste it in here. And then taking a Sharpie, then I just added what month it was for and then just a little description describing the image. It's so satisfying being able to look at this now that all of the months have been completed and all of the boxes are filled. So this is definitely one of my favorite spreads to include in my bullet journals. And with that, we are jumping right into the months. So starting with January. If you're unfamiliar with any of my bullet journaling videos on my channel, then at this point you'll be introduced to the basic layout that I like to do for my monthlies. Starting with the cover page on the left-hand side, this is where I liked to create a watercolor painting on watercolor paper, and then I would just go ahead and paste it into my journal. And as I mentioned earlier, this is most likely the biggest contributor as to how thick my bullet journal is. But for January, then I went ahead and did kind of this soft pastel dessert type of theme, just because January is my birth month. So I wanted to just do something a little bit soft and celebratory, just because January is the middle of winter and it does get very dark and gloomy where I live, so I wanted to find some sort of way to add a little bit of color and life into my month. So for my monthly spreads, then it basically just consists of a monthly calendar, and then I included a monthly challenge box down here. So as we go through the bullet journal, you'll see that this ends up changing a couple of different times throughout the year. And lastly, I also like to include a little brain dump box here in the corner, just so that I can write down any random notes or thoughts that I have on my mind, but I don't really know where else to put it. Another thing that I enjoyed doing for 2024, and this is something that I did for 2023 as well, was making these little tabs on the side. So I basically just cut into the page one dot over, and then just left the little tab sticking out, and then just cut off the rest of the page. So I liked this idea more than adding actual like sticky tabs into it, just because I didn't want there to be any tabs that were sticking out of the book. Like when you close it, then it's all still just within the journal. So this was just kind of my way around that, and also allow me to quickly flip over to any page in the month. Here is where I like to include my monthly doodles, or sometimes referred to as my daily doodles. So I've been doing this for several years, basically almost since the start of me bullet journaling, where I would just draw boxes out kind of in the format of a calendar, and then at the end of every day or the following morning, then I'll come in and just draw a little doodle that would signify or represent that day, or if I end up doing it the following morning. So this is definitely one of my favorite things to do in my bullet journals. It personally means so much to me. I feel like it's easy for me to think of things in a calendar type of layout to begin with, and I'm also a very visual person. So being able to draw out a still from a day, or like a little image for each day, and being able to look at it through a calendar layout, then I think it just refreshes my mind and reminds me so much better about what happened that day. And somehow it basically just transports me back to that day and reminds me of being in that moment. So it's just so special to me, and it's just kind of how my brain works. And I am such a huge fan of memory keeping and being able to find ways to remember things that happen in my life, just because, as I've mentioned in previous videos, then I personally feel like I have really bad memory. So being able to write things down as often as I can and being able to draw things as often as I can really helps to stimulate the memory part inside my brain, if that makes any sense. So anyway, this is obviously going to be a very chatty flip through, just because this is so fresh in my memory and it just holds so much meaning to me. Not only is it going to be my last bullet journal for the foreseeable future, but it's also the first bullet journal that I ever shared on YouTube and shared my process with all of you while I was setting it up. So I just have a lot of sentimental feelings around this bullet journal, and I can already tell that this is going to be kind of a lengthy one. So I hope that you don't mind and that you find it interesting. So yeah, anyway, for these doodle pages, not only do I include my daily doodles, I also typically like to include some sort of decorations that go with the theme that I'm doing for that month. So as you can see, I just drew and painted in a couple of like little donuts at the top there, and then I just pasted in some stickers with like some baked goods. And then typically I either like to include like a quote or a lyric down here at the bottom. I feel like it kind of just fits perfectly there. And then along the side here, then this is where I like to include my monthly favorites as well as my monthly memories. So for my monthly favorites, it's pretty self-explanatory. That's just kind of where I like to jot down or sometimes even doodle my favorite things from the month, so that can sometimes be food or drinks, TV shows, movies, music, specific stationery, or makeup even. And then for the memories box down here, then this is also where I like to print images off of my HP Sprocket. I just set them up as a collage in my phone, and then I just cut them out. And depending on how many images I have printed out for that month, then if I have any extra room left over, then I basically just fill in the extra space with kind of like a journal entry describing each of the images. So again, something that I really find meaning in my bullet journal with is for memory keeping. So I love all of these different aspects of just being able to remember what I was really into at the time or what we were doing at the time. I just think that looking back on this years from now is just going to be very special and very meaningful. So that's basically it for my doodle spread. And then for the remainder of January, then I just have basically like the same weekly setup. So I've explained this in a handful of other videos, but for those of you who are unfamiliar, this is basically the weekly layout that I've followed for the entire year. So over here on the left-hand side, then I just like to include a little box indicating what month we're in as well as what week it is. I also include a few trackers over here. So up here, then I have my habits. In the middle, I have my weight, and then below I have my mood. And then in the center portion here, then these are basically like my daily boxes. So this largest rectangle here, then that's kind of where I write like the bulk of what I did that day, like any tasks, events, chores, appointments, etc. And then this top right box in each of the daily sections, that's where I like to include what workout I did that day as well as what I ate that day. And as we go on, then that's also kind of where I'll go ahead and write down any like tests that I do, such as like ovulation or pregnancy tests, or if I got my period. The box below it, then you'll see during the week, then that is what I use to write my work schedule in, as well as any meetings, or if it's like a payday, or if I'm going to the office. So that's where I like to write down anything that is pertaining to my full-time job. And as you'll see, that's also kind of where I wrote down like when I had a video coming out that day. And then the top right boxes, you'll see that that is basically where I wrote down anything that I would watch, such as TV shows, movies, YouTube channels. That's also where I would write down what game I was playing if I played one that day. And then the bottom right box, then that's where I would write down any music that I listened to, as well as any books that I read or like the daily devotions that we would do. Then that's basically where I would keep track of that. But yeah, this is something that I started including towards the end of 2023 just because I wanted to have different sections for different things that I would do every day. And then I also just really wanted to find a way to write down like what stuff I was into at the time. Like if I'm flipping through this a few years from now and I like come back to this and I'll be like, oh, I was really into The Simpsons at the time, or this is when we started watching this show, or this was when we watched this movie. And then I can look at the music and be like, oh, I was really into like James Bay at the time or something like that. Like that's when I discovered him. Just thinking about future me and when I would potentially like to come back and figure out when I was really into this stuff is kind of what influenced me to start writing things out like this. So my personal preference is that I prefer to have a Sunday start and then a Saturday end to my weeks. So that's what I did. And then I also included a little notes section down here for, again, any additional notes pertaining to that week, like any specific tasks that I'll need to remember to do. And then lastly, over here on the right hand side, then this is where I track my expenses. So this top one is where I like to write down and track my personal expenses, and then the one below it, then that's where I like to keep track of mine and my husband's joint account. And then this very last one here, then that's where I like to keep track of like my credit card usage. So as you'll see, as we go throughout the bullet journal, then sometimes there will be like a little painting or a little picture there, and that just indicates that I don't have any like charges on my account at the time. But if you end up seeing that there's like a post-it note or something covering it, then that just means that there is like some charges on there. So basically my rationale behind this was that if I don't spend my credit card, then I can reward myself by decorating this box, because as you can see, there really isn't too many other opportunities on my weekly spreads to add a lot of decoration. So this was supposed to be like a way to reward myself, basically. Alright, so now that the weekly layout has been explained, then hopefully I'll be able to just flip through this a little bit quicker. But as you can see, I do end up just slightly changing the weekly spreads, just so that it doesn't look exactly like the previous one. Again, like I mentioned, just to add a little bit more like visual interest and a little bit more decoration. For this last week in January, then I used my Zebra Sarasa marble gel pens to create the boxes, so I just wanted to try something different, and I thought that it turned out interesting. Typically, I like to use like my Sakura Pigment Microns, like my fine liners, as well as like watercolors or my Tombos. But every now and then it's fun to switch things up and just try something a little bit different. Alright, so now we are going into February, so fun fact, this was the very first Plan With Me video that I had ever posted on my channel. So if you are curious in seeing like all of my bullet journal related content, then I will go ahead and include like the bullet journaling playlist that I created for my channel. So if you just want something to play while you're like journaling or setting up your planners and whatnot, then that's just something that you can have in the background if you'd like. But for February, then I went ahead and did this rose and candy hearts theme. So again, just following pretty much the same type of layout that I did for January, but just changing up a couple of the elements and obviously the theme and decorations. So my monthly challenge for this month was to have no alcohol, which fortunately I succeeded. So I am quite proud of that. And then here is my February doodles page. So again, I just included a little quote down here with some washi tape and a little rose sticker. If you're curious, the majority of the stickers that I used to decorate my bullet journal with, then they're mostly from journalstay.com. So go ahead and check them out if you are interested in getting some cute little like washi stickers. But yeah, again here I just have my February favorites as well as memories. I kind of did more of like this chalkboard theme, where I just pasted in like black dotted paper and then used some of my Sakura Jelly Roll Moonlight gel pens as well as the 05 Sakura Jelly Roll white gel pen. And I don't know how well you can really see like my images and whatnot here, but I just love this photo so much of my cat Homer. That's not even his bed, but he's just laying in a dog bed and just staring at the wall. So I just love that photo so much. Alright, so moving on to the first February spread. Again, just keeping with the same layout that I did for January. And then just switching it a little bit with like the colors and decorations throughout the month. Alright, so we made it to March. As you can see, then I went ahead and did kind of like this aqua blue and like floral theme. I think I was mainly inspired by like those blown glass vases. So I wanted to go ahead and try painting those since they are obviously glass and translucent, which is not something that I find myself painting very often. I thought that that would be an interesting challenge to do at the time. And then my monthly challenge for March was to work on a portrait. So during this time, I was diligently working on a large portrait of my husband and our dog, who has since passed away unfortunately, but kind of a funny story. But like, that was something that my husband had asked of me to do for him, like pretty much when we like first started dating like years ago. He wanted me to paint a portrait of him and his dog, and for some reason I just never got around to it, but this year I was determined to finally do it. And so that was my goal, was to basically spend the majority of March painting that portrait so that I would have it dried and ready by his birthday, which is in April. So that was why I ended up making that a monthly challenge for March. So here is my doodles page. Again, just sticking with that same color scheme of the bright blues and then like the earthy greens. Just a tiny little quote here. and then a little sticker again from journal site. And then as you can see from a few of my doodles here, then I am actively working on that painting. It was quite a large canvas too, so it definitely needed a lot of time, but I'm very proud of it, and it's honestly probably like my favorite painting that I've done to date. I have to say this March 8th doodle is like one of my favorites. I just think that it's so cute. I'm just sitting on the floor playing GTA, and then my two cats just came and laid right next to me. Ah, so precious. I think it's so cute. Anyway, moving on to my favorites, and then my monthly memories, oil painting, working on that portrait, and then GTA and like music and whatnot. Here's just another weekly spread. I'm honestly not that big of a fan of like how this little piece turned out. It just bloomed like crazy, and not proud of it, but it is what it is. But yeah, I guess I don't really have much to say about a lot of these weekly spreads. If I'm being honest, I don't really know how interesting it is, but it was very useful for me at the time, just being able to plan out specific things during the week and just remind myself of things that I needed to do. And here we are in April. I absolutely love how this cover painting turned out. I was so incredibly proud of it, and surprisingly it ended up doing very well on my channel as well, so thank you guys for that. But yeah, I just really love like this beautiful woodsy theme, kind of with like the sun peeking through the trees. It just makes me think of spring and just going out and traveling in like the fresh spring air. For my April monthly challenge, then I decided to do no spending. As you'll see, that ends up being a lot of my monthly challenges, just because I want to get better about my finances. Here are my April doodles. Again, just with a lot of those trees, I guess kind of like evergreen trees, but yeah, just pasted in a couple of little stickers with some washi tape, and then just obviously my monthly favorites and then my monthly memories. I find that now that I have two cats, that's all that my camera roll consists of on my phone, is just pictures of them. And it doesn't make it any easier that my HP Sprocket, I think just a lot of like little Bluetooth printers, their quality just isn't that great. And because I have two black cats, then whenever I print pictures out of them, then they just, it's so hard to see like what they're doing or what their expressions are unless they're looking directly at the camera, which, as some of you may know, they rarely ever do that. So but I try to print out the ones where they do. So anyway, this is where I started introducing actual lyrics to my monthly doodles. I think up until this point that I was just including like random quotes that I felt like went with the theme. So yeah, there is that. And then just moving right along to the weekly spreads. Alright, so here we are in May. I ended up doing this very saturated hot air balloon theme, which I was really happy with how it turned out. Like I feel like I spent a lot of time working on the cover painting, trying to emulate the exact feel that I wanted. So I'm pretty pleased with how it ended up turning out. But yeah, for the monthly page, I kind of just painted the background with like this dreamy blue color. So I thought that that just contrasted nicely with the orange heading for May. And then again for the monthly challenge, then I just did no spending again, just because I thought that that was still something that I could be challenged with, I guess. And then here are my May doodles. Again, I just went in with kind of like this deeper indigo slash Payne's gray type of blue, just to create kind of like that dreamy background again. And then yeah, just included some favorites as well as memories, again with the cats. Yeah, and then moving right on into the weekly spreads. This week then I ended up just painting like little blobs that are supposed to look like clouds. So I'm just trying to find a way to make each weekly spread their own. I don't know if that made any sense. Alright, so moving on to June. Since we were now approaching the summer season, I wanted to go all out with a fun, bright summer theme. So I just painted this poolside scene and just included some flip-flops and then just a little like floaty tube. I thought that this turned out so cute. Like I was so happy with it and just so inspired because the weather was finally starting to get really nice and warm and I was just really looking forward to the summertime. So yeah, I ended up just decorating this page a lot with like some light pastel Tombow dual brush pens. And then for my monthly challenge, I ended up doing no snacking after supper. So that is something that I was struggling with during the summer, just with having like the sun set so much later and still having so much energy to do stuff. But we usually have supper around like 5 to 5:30. It was definitely something I was struggling with on those longer days where the sun would be out until like 10 p.m. So that was definitely a good challenge that I wanted to attempt. And then here are my monthly doodles. Here then I included a lovely John Mayer lyric. This was the month where I was inspired to start playing Terraria again, so I did start playing that. So yeah, I included it in my favorites here. And then for memories, then it was just so nice being out on the lake again. So yeah, just so many wonderful memories. And then moving right along into the weekly spreads. For some of these, then I ended up just using like my Tombow dual brush pens and didn't do the outlines with any fine liners. And I just thought that that added kind of like a softer look to it, just because that was kind of the theme, just kind of like a soft yet bright summer type of theme, if you can even like use those words together, I guess. This week I'm pretty sure I used some watercolors. That's why the lines are a little bit squigglier. And then July. We've made it to July. I have to say, when I painted this and set this month up, it was like my favorite theme. Like I just love the metallic gold accents and just the metallic watercolors in general. I thought it was just such a refreshing yet warm touch to it. And quite frankly, this is kind of where I started to change my painting style. I started going for a little bit more of like this, if you can even call it, like a more minimalist type of painting. Minimalist as in I didn't feel the need to like fill up the entire page anymore. I was more willing to only focus the painting like in the center and leave a lot of blank space. Again, for July, my monthly challenge was no spending. I feel like that's just always going to be kind of like a default challenge for me. And then here are my monthly doodles. I had so much fun painting these mushrooms. They were surprisingly simple to paint and just so much fun. Like there were so many different variations that you could do. And then here I just included a lyric from Crowded House in my favorite gold gel pen from Pentel. And then moving on to the weekly spreads. So I just really loved kind of more of this earthy color palette for July. I think that at this point I was really happy to be settling down in kind of like a more earthy and neutral type of color scheme compared to like the very bright, fun, summery June theme. But yeah, as you can see, I had so much fun like painting these little boxes here with the mushrooms and just kind of like natural foliage. I enjoyed that a lot and I just thought it was so cute. Alright, so here we are in August. I love how the cover painting turned out. I was so happy with this and it just was very interesting and very different from what I was used to painting. So I really love how it turned out. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in my August plan with me video, but I kind of hate how like maximalist, I went with this page. I wish I would have just kept it simple like the cover page. I feel like that would have just been more cohesive. So unfortunately, I don't enjoy looking at this page as much as I do looking at the cover, but it is what it is. We live and let learn. Again, my monthly challenge, no spending. At this point, I feel like what was the point of even including a monthly challenge if it was just going to be the same thing every month? So for the doodle spread, as you can see, I went for more of that minimalist type of decoration. I didn't fill it up quite as much as I did the previous page, which I'm so much more happy about. I think it just allows the colors and the page to breathe a little bit better like this. And I just have a Modest Mouse lyric down here, filled out all of my favorites, and included a lot of memories. I had a lot of pictures from this month just because we had a lot of things going on. We were visiting a lot of family and just having a lot of outdoor fun, kind of to close out the summer basically. And here, I'm pretty sure I used some Tombos for this page. I really love how this little painting turned out. I thought that it was so pretty. Oh, and I really loved this weekly spread as well. I think I used watercolors to outline everything. And then again for the painting, I just think that it's very soft and warm and inviting. I wasn't as big of a fan of how this one turned out, unfortunately. I think I ended up using some mild liners, and unfortunately I didn't pick like the best colors, so that was a little bit unfortunate. So as you can see, I went back to the delicate watercolor paint type of look, and I really love how this turned out up here. I think I ended up using like color pencils to do this down here, which personally I'm just not that big of a fan of. And here we are in September. Unfortunately, this setup didn't do that great on my channel, but I really love how this one turned out. As you can see, it's very different from any of my other cover pages, but I just love the high contrast and I love the colors so much. Like they're just those very rich and deep jewel tones, like the deep indigo blue, the deep earthy greens. I just love it so much. Here I finally decided to change my monthly challenge, wake up before 7:30, and I did horribly at it. So I don't think I ended up doing this again for the rest of the year. This challenge, at least. So there's that. Oh, and I love how this doodles page turned out as well. I'm such a sucker for high contrast, high intensity types of paintings or just images. Like it just speaks to my black soul. Anyway, I just love like the little lyric that I chose to include for this month as well. But yeah, it was a very fun and eventful month. Obviously, gotta have the pumpkin spice latte as soon as it starts to feel just the slightest bit colder. And then just a lot of pictures of our adorable cats. Like, what can I say? I just love them so much. They have like such silly little expressions. But yeah. Moving on to the weekly spreads. Nothing too crazy. I really love how this one turned out. I just thought it was really cute with this little painting up here. This time I decided to switch things up a little bit and just do like a doodle rather than like a painting. So I thought that that turned out interesting. And here we are in October. I absolutely love this theme, this month. I am just so happy with the cover painting. It's so minimal and so cute. Like, I don't know, it really speaks to me and I just love it so much. I think that it was a really good idea too to go more into like this minimalist approach for October, just because there were a lot of things going on this month and I definitely would not have had the time to sit around and do a lot of painting or decorating throughout the month, so I definitely really appreciated just more of this bare bones, minimal type of theme. My monthly challenge for October was to work on videos. So as some of you may know, at the end of October then I was not home for like about 2 weeks visiting family. So because of that, then I wanted to make sure that I recorded enough content to make up for the time that I was going to be away. So yeah, that's kind of the rationale behind that. For my October doodles, then I included this James Bay lyric down here, as well as this beautiful shimmery record player sticker, which I thought was very fitting. But yeah, just so many fun memories with our families. I thought that on October 22nd, it was so cute. My little Homer, like, he just came up to me and just placed his paw, like, on my face, like, just so gently, like, out of nowhere. It was just so sweet. But yeah, for favorites, as you can see, I was very into the Harry Potter movies again, just because it was obviously like spooky season and I love Harry Potter a lot. So that's just kind of something that my husband and I try to do every year before Halloween, is try and watch all of the Harry Potter movies again. We don't always succeed, but we try. So this time we actually succeeded. We actually finished it like a week or two before Halloween. So that was exciting. But yeah, for the October memories, then just a lot of very fun and sweet pictures with our families. So at this point, then you might be wondering why there's like a little journal entry here. So a little funny story behind that was because, as some of you may know, I have this whole separate journal that I use for like a diary or like just a dump journal. Basically anything else that's just randomly on my mind, that I just write it in there. But I ran into the rare occasion where I finished my diary and then I just had no other ones available to start. So I was waiting for a Jet Pens order to arrive because I had purchased a couple of Leuchtturms that I was going to use as my journal or diary next. But because that was still on the way, then I just had nowhere to journal and it was just really nagging at me. So then I just started randomly journaling in my bullet journal, which I haven't done in a very long time. I used to journal in my bullet journal when I first started, but I found that I didn't like having like a journal entry on one page and then a weekly spread the very next page. So that's why I ended up like just completely splitting the two. But anyway, that's kind of like a little backstory as to why there are just some random journal entries, as you can see. And the way to distinguish what's a journal entry and what's just a normal like entry in my bullet journal for tasks and stuff is because I'll write it in cursive. So I don't know, it was just kind of a weird and somewhat stressful time to not have like a separate journal to write in, but it definitely forced me to just use my resources and find different ways to journal. And in this case, then I just had to journal in my Bujo. But yeah, as you can see, there's just another little entry there. And then I think around this time was when I finally got the Jet Pens order and was able to start using my new journal. So that was really nice. At this point, then we were already in California, like we weren't home anymore, so it's looking pretty bare just because I didn't have very much time to do any planning. And the things that we did have planned were basically like all day events. So there wasn't really anything that I could like add to what was already on there. Hi, Homer! But yeah, to make this page look not as bare, then at some point I just decided to do like some doodling down here just to kind of help this page not look so empty. And I completely forgot to mention this earlier when I introduced this topics section here when I like divided up my notes box, but I ended up introducing it back in like September, I believe. Yeah. And I completely missed it, but I added this box because I wanted to use it to write down like any specific topics that I wanted to follow up with my sister about in like future calls, or just make like a topics list of things that I want to talk to her about, just because that's something that we do every week where we have like a weekly call and kind of just catch each other up on what we've been up to and talk about whatever we want. So I just thought that that would be nice, and it was something that I was inspired by from something that she does in her journals. But yeah, here we are in November now. For November, then I did kind of like this rusty crystal type of theme with like some leaves and foliage, and again with like the metallic watercolors as some accents, just something a little bit like earthy and neutral again. For November, then I just have a simple challenge of working out. So I did do that for several of the days, but not as many as I would have liked. But yeah, here are my November doodles. Pretty simple on the decorations, just added a few crystals here and there with different leaves, and then like another moon and some metallic stars. Here then I just drew out a few of my favorites from the month, and then I also added some monthly memories. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was really nice being able to just look back on everything, even though that was only like about a month ago. And then just moving right on into the first weekly spread. Again, I just did more doodling here. I think it was maybe when my sister and I were on the phone and I was just listening to her tell me about her week, and so I was just doing some doodling just to have my hands do something while we were talking. But yeah, just sticking with like the same color scheme pretty much, but just swapping out like different tones and shades and whatnot. And here we are in the final month of December. For December, I just did a simple snowy evergreen tree theme. So I wanted to paint something kind of like you're looking out of a window and just looking out at the trees and the night sky. And then again, for December, my monthly challenge is no spending. What a surprise. And then here are my December doodles. It's crazy because I just finished this like yesterday or 2 days ago as I'm filming this, so it's still very fresh in my mind. Here are my favorites. I had so many favorites that I wanted to include. There were just so many wonderful things from last month, but I'd say that this captures a good variety of the things that really meant a lot to me from last month. Just some more pictures from the month. Again, more kitties. They're so cute. And then here we are with the weekly spreads for December. I started including this adorable little Pilot Friction stamp of kind of like a play button to just start indicating like when I was posting my videos. This was a stamp that my sister had gifted me, which was very, very sweet of her. But yeah, here is the final weekly spread of December as well as 2024. And lastly, I just have a couple pages back here for kind of like a year in review or like a yearly recap. This was something that I knew that I was going to do earlier in the year, so I just left these pages blank pretty much up until the beginning of December. Then I thought that it was just really nice to be able to go back to the previous months and just refresh my memory on what happened and then just journal about it. Just write a little description about the things that happened that month, as well as just a couple of little doodles sprinkled in there as well. So one thing that I found was very helpful to refresh my memory to help with writing these little descriptions, I just used my Kuretake Zig dot markers, but the ones that come in like the 12 shades and they're double-ended. So I just ended up using like the finer nib to do the writing. And I thought that that turned out really well, and plus there's 12 of them, so it was perfectly coordinated for the 12 months. But yeah, here is the last page of my bullet journal in the last 4 months from the yearly recap. And then I do have quite a few things in here. Basically just a lot of like appointment slips, and then also like my speech for my sister's wedding, so. But yeah, that is it for my 2024 bullet journal and my final bullet journal for the foreseeable future. So I truly hope that you guys enjoyed this video and have enjoyed this past year of bullet journaling with me. All of your support and you sitting down to watch any of my videos or comment on them or share them has meant so much to me this past year, and I'm truly thankful for that. I'm really looking forward to this brand new year of planning content and planning with all of you and just learning more, experimenting with more things. I'm just so excited for me, for all of us, it's going to be a good year. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. Let me know which theme was your favorite, or if there's anything else that you want to share. Please do let me know. I love hearing from you. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.